have enough. I've done enough. I am enough.
A man who built an entire career making the world laugh just went completely silent.
Come on, Jimmy. Seriously, the time is up. People are hip to this kind of stuff. I'm here tonight to blow the lid off it, to be the whistleblower.
He called himself a whistleblower. He said the secrets needed to end. He pointed fingers at people powerful enough to end careers with a single phone call. And then a voicemail surfaced.
You know, I wrote it and I researched it and I practiced it like crazy.
That's Jim Carrey, speaking from France, sounding like a man who rehearsed something very carefully before the world stopped hearing from him. But here's what nobody is connecting. That voicemail didn't just raise questions about where Jim Carrey is. It raised questions about whether the people who wanted him gone already got what they wanted. Before we get to the voicemail, you need to understand exactly who Jim Carrey became in the years before he disappeared, because it matters. It matters a lot. Most people remember Jim Carrey as the guy who could turn his face inside out. The Rubber Man, Ace Ventura, The Mask, a human cartoon who made a generation of kids lose their minds in movie theaters. That's the Jim Carrey the industry wanted you to keep seeing. But somewhere between the 9-figure paychecks and the Hollywood machine running at full speed, something shifted. Jim Carrey started talking, not performing, not doing bits, talking. And what he said made very powerful, very dangerous people extremely uncomfortable.
I was sickened. I was sickened by the standing ovation. I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
That's not a PR-approved statement. That's not managed outrage designed to keep you trending on Twitter. That is a man sitting across from a journalist on live television and torching the building he spent 30 years inside. He didn't stop there. On the Jimmy Kimmel stage, he walked out flashing a triangle symbol, over and over, tongue out, not subtle, not even trying to be subtle. And when Kimmel played dumb and asked what it meant, Jim stared him down like a man who was exhausted by the performance.
Oh, like you don't know what it is. You don't know what that is.
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't know. Jimmy Fallon doesn't know. David Letterman doesn't know.
We don't know.
All the comics and show business don't know what this is. Right?
He listed them by name, like he was building a case. And then he said something that at the time everybody laughed off as a joke, but feels completely different now that a voicemail exists and nobody can find him.
It's the symbol of the all-mocking tongue. And I'm sick of it. I want everybody to be in on the joke, man. You know what I mean? For years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh and stuff like that, make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on.
Hired by the government to keep you distracted, to keep you laughing, to keep you from seeing what's really happening. The audience laughed. Kimmel laughed. Everybody laughed. And that's exactly how it works, isn't it? You hide the most dangerous truth inside a joke. And the moment someone takes it seriously, they become the crazy one. Jim Carrey knew that. He said it himself. The all-mocking tongue. You mock it so nobody believes it. You laugh at it so the question never gets asked. But Jim kept asking. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Hollywood isn't just a place. It's a deal. An unspoken, unsigned, completely understood deal that every single person inside that machine agrees to the moment they cash their first major check. Mel Gibson explained it better than anyone ever has. And the fact that he explained it at all probably tells you something about where Mel Gibson ended up.
Somebody once said my problem was I didn't understand the social contract. Yeah. I now understand what that means.
Yeah.
He understands it now, after everything that happened to him, after the timed leaks and the career demolitions and the quiet blacklisting that followed. He understands the contract, so what is it?
You can't let it get you, because you have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken that you are going to be fucked over at some point by people who you may have done something nice for.
You will be used. You are expected to be used. And you are not allowed to be publicly angry about it if you want to survive in that world. Jim Carrey read that contract. He understood every word of it. And he publicly, repeatedly, loudly refused to sign it. He called the red carpets meaningless. He mocked the awards. He shrugged off the stages that other stars treated like altars. And in one interview that still makes people stop and rewind, he looked into a camera and said something that you almost never hear from someone at his level.
There's no meaning to any of this, so I wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to and join, and here I am.
They're celebrating.
I mean, you got to admit it's completely meaningless.
Well, they say they're celebrating icons inside.
Celebrating
Do you believe
icons.
in
Boy, that is just the absolute lowest aiming, possibility that we could come up with.
The absolute lowest aiming possibility. That's what he called it at an industry event, into a microphone, on camera. And Cat Williams, the man who predicted Diddy's collapse years before the raids, the man who called out the big deviants when everyone else was still applauding them, Cat has been saying for years that this exact behavior, this refusal to play the game, always comes with a price tag.
I'm saying that everything that happens in a business that's based off of pretend, that seems like a setup, is.
Everything that happens in a business, that's based off of pretend, that seems like a setup, is.
Yes. What I'm saying is, if Jussie Smollett and Lee Daniels for a living make stories that are not real, and they make them so good that people believe them and buy them, and that's what business they're in, why would you think it would be weird if they flipped out and said a story that turned out to not be true?
The business of pretend. Stories manufactured to destroy people who got too real. That's what Cat has been screaming into microphones for years. That's what got him laughed at, until Diddy's name started appearing in federal documents. And suddenly, the prophet didn't sound so crazy anymore. So now we ask the question Cat would ask. If Jim Carrey spent the better part of a decade refusing the contract, calling out the symbols, mocking the rituals, telling millions of people not to trust the show, what story would they need to tell about him to make him go away quietly? This is where everything converges. In the weeks following Jim Carrey's appearance at the César Awards in France, the appearance that broke the internet, the appearance that sent side-by-side comparisons flooding every platform, the appearance that had fans freezing frames and circling eyes and asking questions nobody in the industry wanted answered. A voicemail surfaced, not a press release, not a publicist's statement, not a carefully worded tweet from a verified account. A voicemail, the kind of message you leave when you're not sure you'll get another chance to say it. The details of that voicemail are fragmented. The way things always are when something real slips through the cracks before the cleanup crew arrives. But what the people who heard it describe paints a picture that is impossible to ignore once you've heard the rest of this story. Jim sounds tired. Not celebrity tired, not I need a vacation tired. The kind of tired that lives behind the eyes of someone who has been carrying something enormous for a very long time, with nowhere to put it down. He references the industry. He references people who wanted him quiet. And in the part that has people genuinely shaken, he asks whether the person receiving the message will even be allowed to hear it. Think about that. A man leaving a voicemail and wondering out loud whether the message will even reach the person he's calling.
I'm retiring, but
No.
yeah, probably.
Are you being serious? Or are you screwing with me?
I'm being fairly serious. Yeah.
Really? Why?
It depends. It depends if the angels bring some sort of script that's written in gold ink that says to me that it's going to be really important for people to see. I might continue down the road, but I'm taking a break.
Important for people to see. He said that in a public interview before France, before the comparisons, before the voicemail. He was already signaling. The way people signal when they can't say the full thing out loud, but they need something on the record before the record gets sealed. And then he went to France, and the man who came back wasn't moving like the man who left. Let's talk about what people actually saw in France, because the reaction wasn't just internet chatter. It was visceral, immediate, the kind of collective double take that happens when something primal in the brain fires before logic catches up.
Jim Carrey, I believe last night at the César Awards in France, making his big debut back into the spotlight. I'm going to play it for you in a second, but I put, who is this? Because it is definitely not Jim Carrey. The eyes aren't even the same color. They don't even care anymore.
They don't even care anymore. Sit with that for a second. This is a coincidence. Not lighting plays tricks. They don't even care anymore. That's the language of someone who believes this has happened before. Done carefully, done quietly. And this time, whoever is behind it either got sloppy or stopped bothering. The breakdown goes deep. Jim Carrey has brown eyes, dark brown, almost black in certain lighting. Anyone who has watched his interviews, his films, his close-up scenes over 30 years knows this the way you know the face of someone you've seen 1,000 times. The man in France had hazel eyes, greenish flashes, a different light in the gaze entirely.
So this is the comparison of their eyes. As you can see clearly, two different eye colors, right? But let's zoom in some more. Let's zoom in some more. So this is Jim Carrey, right? And you can see the way the eyebrows sit, how he has somewhat of a monolid. It's not quite a monolid, not quite a double lid. It's kind of in between. But then you just see, okay, just look at the facial structure. Now let's move this up. What is this? What is happening? Look at the lids. Look at the lids of the eye. Look at the eye color, the eye shape, the eyebrows. So they put all this makeup on him, which you can see the makeup, but they didn't fill in his eyebrows? Huh? So his eyebrows are now gray, but his hair is still brown? Look at the skin. There's no pores on this thing.
Gray eyebrows, brown hair, no pores on the skin. You can filter a face. You can compress a video. You can blame lighting sensors and aging and stress. But you cannot explain why someone touched up the foundation and forgot to fill in the eyebrows. That's not aging. That's not surgery recovery. That is a makeup application that didn't account for every detail. And from France, there was something else. Something that the official narrative completely glossed over.
I practiced it like crazy, but it's then I watched everybody talking 1,000 miles an hour up there receiving their awards, and I was like, I'm dead. And I made mistakes, and I was like a novice. I felt a lot of love, and I felt a lot of appreciation that I tried.
I felt a lot of appreciation that I tried. Compare that to the man who stood on a red carpet and called the entire concept of celebrating icons the absolute lowest aiming possibility in human existence. Compare that to the man who looked into a camera on live TV and said Hollywood was spineless, en masse, without flinching. That sentence, I felt a lot of appreciation that I tried. Sounds like someone reading from a card. Someone who was told what register to stay in. Someone performing humility for an audience that was watching very closely. Now here's where the story gets a layer. Most people haven't connected to the voicemail yet. On March 2nd, 2026, right around the time the Caesar Awards footage was breaking the internet, a mask and makeup artist named Alexis Stone posted on Instagram. The post showed Stone wearing what appeared to be Jim Carrey's face. The caption read, Alexis Stone as Jim Carrey in Paris. Alexis Stone posted on Instagram with Jim Carrey's face saying Alexis Stone as Jim Carrey in Paris. Along with the initial photo, Alexis posted another image with Carrey's new look, along with what we now know as an AI-generated image of a Jim Carrey mask and makeup. Now, the official version of this story is that Alexis Stone was simply doing what he always does, creating viral content, showing off his craft, maybe even collaborating with Jim as a prank. And maybe that's true, but let's apply Cat Williams' framework here for just a moment. In a business based entirely on pretend, where stories that are not real are made so convincingly that people buy them, where the whole operation runs on manufactured narratives. Why would you announce the mask publicly? Why would you post it to Instagram with a location tag the day the internet is exploding with questions about whether the man at those awards was real? Two possibilities. Either it was a genius marketing move by an artist who understood the moment, or it was something much more deliberate, a signal, a release valve. Give the conspiracy crowd something to focus on. A mask artist, a prank, performance art. So the real question never gets asked. And the real question isn't whether Jim wore a mask at the Caesar Awards. The real question is, where is Jim Carrey right now? And who is answering for him? Agencies like the FBI and CIA have been working on masks for so long that they've been able to sit next to strangers, and even presidents, without them noticing a damn thing. This is not conspiracy territory. This is confirmed, documented, on-the-record reality. The CIA built masks so convincing they fooled sitting presidents. That technology exists. It has existed for decades. The question of whether it could be applied to a celebrity appearance is not far-fetched. It's almost boring in its practicality. And Jim Carrey, the man who disclosed that he was coached by a CIA operative just to survive wearing a green suit on a movie set, knew exactly how close that world sat to his.
Brian Grazer came in and came up with a brilliant idea, which was to hire a gentleman who is trained to teach CIA operatives how to endure torture. And so that's how I got through the Grinch.
He already had a relationship with that world. He already knew what it looked like up close. And when a man with that kind of knowledge starts publicly dismantling the industry's mythology, the symbols, the spinelessness, the manufactured stories, it stops being an abstract risk. It becomes a very specific problem that needs a very specific solution. This is the part of the story that the voicemail forces you to confront directly. Because a voicemail implies two things. Someone made a call, and someone wasn't picking up. Who wouldn't pick up Jim Carrey's calls? And more importantly, who would want to make sure those calls never got through? Let's follow the money the way Cat Williams always does. Because Cat's framework is simple and brutal. In this business, nothing is accidental. And the person who isn't there to collect their check anymore is always the most profitable person in the room.
Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year, and it's over. And the money goes up and up.
Remove the difficult artist. Keep the profitable brand. You don't need Jim Carrey the person to keep making money off Jim Carrey the product. You just need the name, the catalog, and a face that roughly passes at red carpet distance. Jim Carrey the person was becoming a liability. Jim Carrey the brand was still worth hundreds of millions. And the moment that equation became obvious, the moment he announced his retirement, rejected the system publicly, started talking openly about ego death and meaninglessness and God, the clock started ticking. Then came the lawsuit, the shadow that never fully left. Cathriona White, his ex-girlfriend, her overdose, the wrongful death suits filed against Jim, accusations of fake name prescriptions and emotional responsibility for her death, the brutal press coverage that followed, the cases that quietly dissolved without a conviction, without a verdict, just enough wreckage to permanently stain his name. Fans who follow this closely spell out the fear that most people are too scared to say out loud, that the lawsuits weren't just tragedy, they were leverage, the perfect kind of leverage, the kind that lets someone walk a very famous, very difficult person into a back room and offer a choice with no good options. You take the fall publicly, go to prison. We feed the world a story about a fallen icon and cash out on the tragedy. Or you step back. You let us keep the Jim Carrey brand running. You disappear into whatever private life you can piece together, and you never, ever talk about what you know. And then one day, maybe from a hotel room in France, maybe from somewhere nobody thinks to look, you pick up a phone and you leave a message, and you wonder out loud whether the person on the other end will even be allowed to hear it.
I used to be a guy who was experiencing the world, and now I feel like the world and the universe experiencing a guy.
The world experiencing a guy, not a man living his life. Not Jim Carrey making choices. Something larger, moving through a vessel, using a shape that used to belong to someone specific. He said that years ago, before France, before the voicemail, before the hazel eyes, and the smooth skin, and the gray eyebrows, and the subdued voice that didn't sound like it had ever called Hollywood spineless. He was already describing what it felt like to stop being himself. This is the question the voicemail demands, not as a dramatic flourish, not as content, as a genuine, uncomfortable, undeflectable question. Is Jim Carrey safe? Because look at the pattern Cat and Mel and Jim himself have all independently described. The industry schedules its downfalls. The people who step out of line get turned into cautionary tales. Dave Chappelle walks away from a 9-figure deal and gets labeled unstable. Cat Williams talks about the big deviants and gets laughed at until the deviants end up in court. Shia LaBeouf finds God, and the only stories that get pushed are the arrests and the meltdowns. That version of Jim Carrey, the defiant one, the one who walked onto Kimmel's stage and named names, the one who called the crowd spineless on international TV, that version has been completely replaced by a man who says he felt appreciation that he tried. That's not aging. That's not growth. That is a switch being flipped. And the voicemail suggests that somewhere the real switch is still on. That somewhere the man who said he had enough, who saw through the symbols, who understood exactly what contract he was refusing to sign, that man picked up a phone and tried to reach someone outside the walls of whatever situation he's in.
Don't get me wrong, you know, Jim Carrey is a great character, and I was lucky to get the part. But I don't think of that as me anymore.
A great character, lucky to get the part. If you are the kind of system that separates people from their brands, that keeps the product alive while the person disappears, that manufactures stories in a business built entirely on pretend. Those words are not just philosophical. They are a blueprint. Jim Carrey told you he was a character someone else could play. And then a man who looked almost like him showed up in France and played it. This is where we land, not with answers, because in a system that, by its own insiders' admission, runs on manufactured reality, engineered downfalls, and invisible contracts, Answers are exactly what you're never supposed to find. We land with two questions. The first, if the industry that Mel Gibson described, the one that stabs you in the back and expects you to be philosophical about it, the one that Cat Williams says schedules its tragedies for maximum profit, if that industry had a man who knew too much, who wouldn't stop talking, who had the perfect scandal hanging over his head like a loaded firearm, what was the cleanest way to make him disappear without making him a martyr?
In business, nothing is coincidental, or you would be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing.
Nothing is coincidental. The artist always loses. And the second question, that voicemail, fragmented, passed between people who weren't supposed to have it, from a man asking whether his own message would even be received. What was Jim Carrey trying to tell us? And who made sure most of us never got to hear the whole thing? We are entering a time where we can't be sure if the figure right in front of us is even real. Jim Carrey spent 30 years making faces that made the whole world feel something. He spent the last decade of his public life trying to tell you that the faces, including his own, were never the real thing. And now, from somewhere nobody can confirm, a voicemail exists. From a man asking if anyone is listening. If you've been listening this whole time, hit subscribe, because this story is not over. And the next piece of it, you're going to want to be here when it drops.
जितना शुक्रिया अदा करा आपका सराकी ब्राह्मण दा बुम घाटे जै भी मैं को इतना सपोर्ट कीती है अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह तोरे बिरा को पबजी आ जाए आपने प्रोग्राम विच ऐड कर दी मैं को बड़ी खुशी है नहीं जो मैं पबजी दे प्रोग्राम विच ऐड थी गया सब तो बड़ी खुशी है जो मैं सराकी कंटेंट रख के पबजी दे प्रोग्राम विच ऐड थी एक हर इंसान दा ख्वाब होंदे भाई कई प्रोग्राम विच मेरा ना होवे सब तो बड़ा ख्वाब इंसान दा अवार्ड होंदे अगर अल्लाह से ये तक घिन है तो ओ तक ही घिन वैसी क्योंकि हर काम खुदा दी मर्जी दे नाल थिनन इंसान आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते ये तक भी मैं कहना सोचा सारे बिरामी ने मोहब्बत है इतना सपोर्ट की थी वे बहु घाट अरसे विच इतना फॉलोअर करवा दी मैं मेरी एक सोच ही कहना है बाकी मेरी हर टाइम यह कोशिश होंदी है जो सारे सराकी बिरामी को सपोर्ट करना और कीती भी पिया सारे को मैं यह सलाह दे सारे बिरा एक सपोर्ट करो इवें सारे एक ठीक निकलदे वेसू हुन ई प्रोग्राम को घिनन कीते हर बंदा उर्दू कंटेंट रख दे साडे आपले सराकी भी उर्दू कंटेंट रखी पे कोई मसला नहीं असा खड़े सराकी जाए सा को देवे ना न देवे ना ऐसा सराकी कंटेंट रखे हर बंदे को पता है ऐसा कोई उर्दू वॉइस के नहीं की थी कोई उर्दू कंटेंट नहीं से रखा बाकी ए तुसा बिरामे में मोहब्बत है जो इन स्टेज तक घिन आयो बाकी तो को पता है कल गेम प्ले कैनियन दी पे आईपैड गिदे से नवा सारे बिरामे ग्रेसिया से कुछ दीवारें थी वो आईपैड आवे सी पीछे इंशाल्लाह नवे आईपैड ते गेम प्ले करे सो हाल ही सिर्फ कस्टम रूम खेलते रहंदे रोजाना शाम को अगर तुसा बिरामे तो कोई खेडन चाहंदे व्हाट्सएप दा ग्रुप बायो लगा खड़े तुसा आके ज्वाइन कर सकते हो बाकी सारे बिरा हमेशा ही एक बे दे नाल खड़े रहे एक बे को सपोर्ट करे बेशक अगर तो कुछ चंगा ना लगे तो बुला कर सकया लेकिन कहीं को हेट न दीता क्योंकि हेट नाल इंसान हमेशा कमजोर थी